Hello people of YouTube, Rich from PCGamesN here, and in our second look at the stars of Total War Warhammer 2's Prophet and Warlock DLC, we consider Tehenhauin, Prophet of Sotek, rare red-crested skink, and lizard whose name I definitely mispronounced several times when talking to Creative Assembly about his design. Tehenhauin in the lore, his main conflict is with pestilence, right? In that, they come and they took over a city of Chaka with a big plague, and he led an exodus of skinks and red-crested skinks away from that. Was there, does he have maybe a secondary angle with Lord Skrulk?
In the campaign itself, he is suffering from the pestilence is there as well. They are still there, and they do suffer from a lack of source due to this plague that is being sort of spread by pestilence. So they do factor in, but Clan Scryer is basically taking advantage of the conflict and trying to expand its domain throughout Lustria at the same time.
For Tehenhauin, kind of his early campaign is focused very much on sort of that battle against the plague that the Skaven have unleashed. So yeah, you kind of suffer early on. You won't be able to get source units. They'll be extremely expensive in your campaign. And yeah, then part of his campaign is focused on the prophecy of Sotek, which will allow him eventually to kind of get rid of that negative and sort of progress in his campaign.
We talked a little bit about the coming of Sotek, and then that's related to the prophecies that no one else took seriously from the city of Chaka, right? And they were dismissed by the Slime Mage Priests, and I got a little bit of a sense of overlap with the 2012 Mayan prophecy about the end of the world and everything. Did that come up at all as a...
Well, yeah, I mean, as you say, as according to the lore, there was a plague in Chakwa, and Tehenhauin rallied the skinks for the counter-offensive, because obviously the plague was caused by the rat men. There was a prophecy that was written that said that, this plague will come, it will have to be born, you'll have to fight against them, and no one took it seriously except for our hero Tehenhauin. So yeah, it's kind of his destiny to do this, I think. Well, certainly, definitely, it's his destiny to do this. Yeah. And
we talked about him sort of leading an exodus of skinks away from Chakwa. Is that reflected in his starting situation? Is it the exodus? Is it depicted in any way?
Yeah, I think that's occurred in our campaign. I think that's occurred slightly before our campaign starts. Like the migration has begun. He starts like in the Vortex campaign. He starts in the south, and he kind of like I don't know. I think this is how the campaign is supposed to be played, but you sweep your way northwards.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, exactly like that. From Chakra in the north, he's kind of he's done his migration south. He's ran away. He's took the plaque with him. Now he's ended up in the south of Lustria, and he's got this prophecy with him. He doesn't have any sources with him, but he does have his red-crested skinks, and then from there, then he's just gonna go north, kind of reconquer Lustria and get rid of the Skaven, basically.
Purge the rat filth.
Yeah.
When they're not rampaging out of control, lizardmen are cold-blooded and dispassionate. It's why they don't run easily from combat, and was actually represented on the tabletop by the fact that they rolled 3 dice for psychology tests and discarded the highest. Little tidbit for you there. But Tehenhauin is an exception, and that has an impact on the way he speaks. And what about Tehenhauin? Because the skink priests in the game right now sound very sort of snivelly and...
Yeah, I mean, he's more like a... We like to say like he's like a wise, like chief sort of character. I think his voice brings that across as well. And as you said, he's a bigger skink, so he sounds deeper. And actually, the actual words that he says that we wrote for him in English, because they all speak Saurian lizardmen. The actual words that are translated from English, he's like I said before, he's very passionate about what he does. So that comes across in actually what he says. He says like, we must kill them all, we must fulfill the prophecy, we must do this. He's zealous. That's how I describe him. He's zealous, and that's that's how the prophet should be. I think. Yeah.
He's a very sort of Moses-like figure.
Very much so. So the lizardmen are very dispassionate killers. They are purposeful killers. They kill for a purpose, but he does it, because he loves it. He's a passionate killer.
Slightly more emotional.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, writing Tehenhauin's VO was great because of the kind of character he is and how you want his personality to come across and what he says, his zealousness and that. I quite enjoyed writing his VO because I've written a lot of characters for Warhammer, and he was probably the most interesting so far.
Another more obvious manifestation of Tehenhauin's hatred of the Skaven is in his campaign mechanics and his start position. While his main mission in life is to follow the prophecies of Sotek and bring his god into the world, killing a lot of rats is inextricable from that mission.
Tehenhauin, you mentioned there, you alluded to the sacrifices to Sotek that you can do. Can you explain a little bit about that mechanic and what that'll enable you to do?
Yeah, so that's kind of a brand new feature which is bespoke to his faction. And yeah, as Gary pointed out, all throughout his campaign, he'll be kind of gathering sacrifices from all different races, not just Skaven. He won't be able to do it for lizardmen. Yeah, and then you'll gain a new resource throughout your campaign, which is sacrificial offerings. You'll be saving those up, and then you have a brand new kind of UI panel, which is essentially a sacrificial pyramid. And on that, you'll be able to choose from a lot of different sacrifices. And that, with that resource, which is the sacrificial offerings, you'll be able to spend that to unlock loads of different things, ranging from really powerful campaign buffs, the Regiments of Renown, which are new to this pack,
right.
Ultimately leading to the top of the pyramid, which is the kind of manifestation of Sotek himself, which gives you this absolutely crazy battle ability, which is really cool.
Is that the spirit snakes?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, where you also capture Skaven on the battlefield and then use them to fuel your sort of your sacrifices and your sort of your benefits that you get from that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Tehenhauin is really guided by his by like the word of Sotek. He's the prophet of Sotek, and I guess the prophecy is all about like killing ratmen in return for rewards, which they've designed into their sacrifices. So it kind of works pretty well. You work your way through this campaign, you sacrifice things, and you get stronger as a result of it.
So deep does Tehenhauin's hatred of the Skaven run that it manifests at every level of his character, even the units he brings with him, which will lend a very different flavour to your army compositions at the start of his campaign, especially if you've been relying on the rock-solid Saurus.
He's got lots of new units which really sort of excel at killing Skaven and sort of hitting hard and hitting fast, essentially. You've got units like the Ark of Sotek, which is basically a Bastillodon, the big armored dinosaur, with a giant container which releases snakes around it. So you can really use that to sort of bog down an area, do damage to giant clumps of Skaven. It's perfect for that. And then in addition, we've got the Engine of the Gods now in the game. So that is another unit which, again, excels at destroying sort of areas of concentrated enemies. You have the Burning Alignment spell, which basically summons a gigantic laser beam from the heavens, which comes down and just goes along a line and just eradicates things that are around it. So he's got several units which sort of fit together really. I mean, the red-crested skinks really are molded after their sort of lord in Tehenhauin, where they're glass cannons really. They're very, very hard hitting because they're equipped with great weapons rather than just javelins. So they've got these gigantic hammers which they use. They're not particularly great in the front line, but if you can get them in the flank and hit really hard, then they'll pay their cost for sure.
What tier are they at?
They're about sort of tier 2, I'd say. So they're not top tier, but they're very fast. So they've got the speed of a skink, but they've also got a great weapon. So if you're fighting armies like, say, the dwarves, you can really do damage to them because you can get in and around their flanks and start attacking their missile units with armor-piercing damage.
Yeah, so he's kind of very centered around buffing, the new units, especially the red-crested skinks. So yeah, if you're using him, you're heavily incentivized to bring along these new units because he gets all kinds of buffs that, like Gary said, that although they start off at tier 2, he can definitely make them kind of into some real monsters kind of later on in the campaign.
But what does the prophecy of Sotek look like when fulfilled? How do you depict a god manifesting in the game? With a powerful battle ability that will conjure a giant snake, as it turns out. And that's tricky to pull off for a number of reasons.
This one is think of sort of like a wind spell book, on steroids, where it'll take out an entire sort of battle line if you allow it. It's basically the manifestation of Sotek appears and just sort of swallows the entire sort of area that it's sort of summoned across. So
it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
That was a bit tricky to do. I remember the animator sitting next to me, work on it, and that was back and forth between rigging, VFX, and her because nobody knew how it was supposed to look. So it was a lot of tests to have it right. to have like the good shape, the good rigging for it, because it has to be very light, because it was just for VFX, not a full character. So, and the colors and how big it was supposed to be, like, I think we had a bit of everything.
And I think we did a snake first, then we showed it to Games Workshop. It's like, no, push it, take it further, more spikes, more everything. It's like, okay. So we took it a bit further and they're like, yeah, done. Make it more fantasy. So yeah, that's what I think. Originally it started off as a bit more generic looking snake, and then it just kept going and going until it just got a lot more interesting visually.
Worm-like or flowing motions in the skeleton?
The stalkers maybe, or the necroserpents.
Yeah.
I think they had quite a, that was when that came out, that was one of the most challenging aspects. I remember that being very, very difficult to work with. But yeah, I think took some lessons from that and it integrated it into this creature.
But as tricky as the snakes were to animate, CA tell us that Tehenhauin himself was the biggest challenge in the DLC because of the holy plaque containing the prophecy of Sotek that he refuses to leave at home.
What was the trickiest sort of lord or unit in this DLC to animate, and why?
I had problem with, we called him Juan because I don't know how to say his full name. Tehenhauin, I think.
Yeah.
Him, Juan. Because he has this plague he's supposed to carry all the time, and how do you fight with a plague in the hand that you're always supposed to carry? And it was complicated to come up with a solution with that, because well, at first they showed me the character, I was like, oh, he's gonna swap people with it, but he actually can't do that because, well, it's a holy plague, so you can't bash people with it. So you had to put it behind and attack with the sword and put it back, and to avoid those repetitive movements, it was a bit complicated. I hope it's working. I think this one was the most tricky for us. He has a sword, so he's mainly using a sword, trying to be quite impressive in melee, and he has a few spell casting animation, but it's mainly VFX around the plague.
So there's a little insight into everything that went into creating Tehenhauin, the red-crested prophet of Sotek. If you missed our video on Ikit Claw, you can check that out on the channel, along with plenty of other deep dives into the units and lords of Total War Warhammer. So maybe subscribe and get notifications for plenty more like this. Give us a like if you enjoyed, thanks as always for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.